Tonight we're going to discuss Alfred Hitchcock's famous sports movie, Strangers on a Train.
Jackass.
Alfred Hitchcock's 1951 thriller, Strangers on a Train, remains one of the director's most revered and critically acclaimed projects. When a young tennis player, Guy Haynes, has a chance encounter with a charming psychopath named Bruno on a train ride, his world is turned upside down when he realizes Bruno's seemingly hypothetical proposal of committing dual murders to avoid suspicion has a very serious bent to it. This is a movie that has had a hell of a lot of influence when it comes to thrillers or setup, or even some of the special effects and suspense scenes that are in this film are undebatably iconic.
You know, my only exposure to it was an exhibit at the old Universal Studios, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, where one of the little breakout exhibits that they had there was actually surrounding the technical makeup of the carousel scene that takes place towards the end of the movie. And that was my exposure to it. All I remember is my dad's face when the guy mentioned the name of the movie, and he didn't seem very impressed.
One of the most interesting things about this movie is one of the writers being Raymond Chandler. This is the famous author that created the character of Philip Marlowe you may have seen in The Big Sleep. This is an iconic film noir character, right up there with Sam Spade. Of course, it helps that Humphrey Bogart played both roles in films.
I mean...
So this is an author that has had a distinct pedigree when it comes to the thriller genre, but he didn't write this film. He wrote an initial draft, and he and Hitchcock had a lot of bickering behind the scenes. And I think that after Chandler called Hitchcock a fat bastard at one point, their partnership ended, and they got another screenwriter to do it. But they kept his name on for marketing purposes. So,
oh my God, that's cold-blooded.
Genius.
But this film came out at a time where Hitchcock had a small string of failures with Under Capricorn and The Paradigm Case, films that probably more of the astute Hitchcock fans would know of. And so Hitchcock poured a lot of time and energy in getting this right. And to this day, there's nary a top 10 Hitchcock list that doesn't include this film on it, if not in the top 5.
Hitchcock was before his time, man. I mean, this cat was he's just dropping things that we're still seeing today. I mean, just the whole concept when you got Guy, this up and coming tennis player, you know, he's on the train, and, you know, I mean, there's so many different, he takes you through so many different places. Like, how is it that these two strangers on this train meet, have this interaction with one another? Now, granted, Bruno is crazy as dog shit. I'm sorry. But they meet, and then this meeting, this 15-minute meeting, we'll say, just takes them down this whole journey of you know, where they're going. Like, and Bruno was not playing. Like, you sitting there, you thinking, nowadays, you thinking you're talking to somebody crazy, and you're like, that's just crazy. It's okay. No, they could be like Bruno and could be like really, really, really talking about some serious stuff. So there's so much going on in this film, and I forgot that I was watching the movie that was made like back in 1951. I was just in the experience. I was just in there enjoying the ride.
I agree. Listen, the open is definitely strong on the train. There's a lot of things that go on there that definitely pull you in. I feel like there's a lot of fluff here also, though, too, that for me personally, at least, kind of broke the immersion a little bit. But yet, when it was time to come back on track, you know, I would be pulled back in. But I really definitely felt like it was moments strung together, even more so than some of the other Hitchcock offerings we've had here. Again, not even trying to imply that this experience was negative, but I think we're back to that same concept of this is just a bunch of stuff strung together.
Uh-oh. Here we go again. I really enjoyed Strangers on a Train. When I was a kid, it captivated me. Now, the setup. I've heard many people say that and to a degree, there's truth to it. It is kind of preposterous. The entire setup to the rest of the film is preposterous, but I love the way that they utilize it. Holy shit. That weirdo that I met on the train that spouted out this hypothetical bullshit, that's all real. The fact that it's used in service of the plot, the fact that he can't go to the police, he can't go to an authority figure and explain it because they're going to think it's preposterous themselves. So the very nature of this setup that works towards galvanizing the plot forward, I thought was brilliant.
Exactly. And part of me is like, well, that's exactly the reason why it worked to go to cops, but then I'm not inclined to trust cops in this method and all this other stuff. But I'll put it this way. At the very least, even the biggest goody two-shoes, neat-nick, whatever you have, could believe how Guy Haynes would think that it's a bad plan. At the very least, I'm with you there. But, sir, I have to take a bit of umbrage in calling this and stressing preposterous in this particular instance, sir, okay? And get your spoiler warnings on here because I'm afraid it's going to have to drop a few here. Let me be clear. We have watched a movie from Mr. Hitchcock about birds that try to peck the shit out of people and kill them in droves. We've watched a movie about somebody who is thought to be possessed but not really possessed, and then the person tries to shape them into another person that they were, but they thought they were that person when they really actually were that person and they weren't. Okay, then there's the whole thing with the guy who's so messed up in the head that he really is his mom, but he doesn't know that he's his mom because he still thinks he's him, but he's really his mom and him, but he's like barely him and more like his mom. No, but this guy being crazy and deranged, that shit preposterous. Get the hell off me.
Oh no, this is by far the most realistic of every Hitchcock film that we have seen, and even more so because taking a look from a protagonist, Guy Haynes' perspective, and Guy Haynes really does sound like an underwear model or something.
He really does. That's legit.
But looking at it from his perspective, he's sitting there, he's on the train, he's minding his own business. He runs across this kind of kooky guy who follows the social papers very well, and that's something that kind of dates his film. Nowadays, they would have followed him on Facebook and known all this shit. Let's be honest. If I was in his shoes at that moment, which is funny because the film kind of starts with a focus on the shoes, fantastic way to open the film. I would have spent time with him too because it's just so goddamn entertaining. I would have put myself in that position and had to face it. And there's nary, for at least the first half, there's nary a decision that Guy makes that isn't one that I wouldn't probably make myself in that particular set of circumstances.
Well, first things first, the moment that you see wingtips and then you see these guys' faces and who they are, you knew Bruno wore the motherfucking wingtips, okay? You knew that was a thing. A, B. Yeah, okay. Pro tip, guys, okay? If someone came up to me on the train and say, hey, aren't you the student of the game? Why, yes, I am. Oh, I love your writings on the Dolphins and the UCF Knights. Tell me, you have a wife and a young daughter, right?
End of conversation.
But in defense of the film, even Guy had took a step back upon the visiting of his personal life.
But that's the problem. A step. Bullshit. Full sprint. This guy's a tennis player. You're telling me he can't offer more than a step in this scenario? No, I know he's on a train, but still, dear God.
Well, at the same time, times have changed. This was a slightly more innocent time. If you're running across somebody dressed in a suit on a train going across the country between DC and wherever the hell he was going, your guard is a little lower. Riding on the train back then isn't exactly like the way it is now.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, again, we're not talking about a guy who decided to drive a pair of lovebirds to some dude in some place that he had only met that day in the shop and then decided to extract information from a local school marm and shit. Yeah, no, that's a good point, Demos. I should have known better.
Well, that was a different case. That was a white woman doing all this stuff. Your guard is far a right pretty woman doing all this stuff, and she has birds.
God damn it! Stop
that
it.
makes it okay.
Yeah.
If there's one thing that I can say that made this film, it kind of tripped me out a little bit. I honestly believe Bruno didn't care who he had this conversation with.
Mm-hmm.
He was going to have the conversation with somebody. It just happened to be Guy. And then his world is changed by the interaction that he has with this stranger on the train. But legitimately, there was no motive when it came to Bruno. You know, Bruno was real. He was a clever guy, and he knows what he knows. So he knows when it comes to murder, there's always a motive. They're looking for the person with the motive. Like, he laid it all down for Guy. And he had absolutely no motive in it. And there was no motive in him going after Guy to begin with. Like, it really was random. And that's what makes it so trippy. It could have been anybody. And there's no telling what would have happened.
You see, some classic film fans might add a motive to it. And it is definitely something that is hinted in the film. And it's something that I'm going to bookmark for the moment because I'm going to come back to it. But there is some a homosexual subtext for Bruno specifically, and his attraction to Guy, from the flirtive way that he acts towards him, to his possessive nature over him, and even towards some of the ways that the climax unravels.
Right in the face.
And I'd like to pair it up against another Hitchcock film, which we already covered, North by Northwest.
Right in the face.
There is a parallel between those two films.
My mind kind of goes in a bit different direction too, in that like, you see the links that Bruno will go, and really what he's setting the table for in all actuality. And it's real easy to forget through a lot of the events until Bruno brings it back up later, that the main point from Bruno's perspective, Bruno's motive for taking out Miriam is for his dad to eventually get taken out. And my question to you, gentlemen, is how much of a dick is his dad that you will straight up, in good faith, kill a bitch to see to it that your dad will get taken out by somebody else?
Well, you could say that Bruno just doesn't have the balls to do the patricide himself. I mean, psychologically speaking, it is said that matricide or patricide, even worse so for matricide, is the most despicable and hardest crime to commit. He is looking for that somebody else to do that.
If you notice, Bruno did not get violent with Guy until the very end. Like, Guy punched Bruno in the face whenever Bruno was trying to pretend that he was dazed and confused. Bruno didn't get violent back. Like, he could have. I mean, he was totally warned. I mean, dude punched you in the face. But it wasn't until Guy really said, I'm not doing this, and then Bruno truly felt betrayed that he was willing to get violent with this dude. And that was like, that was at the end, at the end scene. So I totally, I see that now. I think that there was an attraction there. And it makes sense as to why he wouldn't get physical with him. Guy
wasn't committing. The murders, what you can argue were first base. The murder of Miriam is shocking for a film from 1951. When people say that Alfred Hitchcock shot his murders like love scenes and his love scenes like murders, that is evidence in this film.
I mean, they do refer to marriage as a man's death sometimes. I'm just saying. I mean, I don't feel that way, but I listen. No, they don't judge me. No, but seriously, no. Actually, Miriam's death again. For 1951, I can imagine being, oh my God. But I even still kind of feels like it holds up now. Obviously, it's not gonna freak people out, but seeing that, something very unpleasant's happening, and that that you are in fact watching murder, and it evokes the right tones in your soul when it happens. So yeah, no, I definitely think it still holds up.
Well, visually speaking, it's an achievement. The reflection of the murder on the glasses, the echoing of the reflection in Barbara, the little sister's glasses with the lighter later on, it is confident as hell.
It was real. I mean, that, like, when I'm watching that, like, I'm feeling her gasping for air. Like you see it, and then just the way that they filmed it, it was different. Like it didn't seem like I was watching a movie. Like I legitimately, I'm sitting there watching her gasping. I'm watching him. It legitimately looked like somebody was getting choked out. Like I'm not trying to I'm not trying to give Hitchcock too many props right now, because Demos, you love this dude, so I know that you will give him all the props for all of us. But he did a good job with this film, man. And that scene, I was in it. I was riding the ride. I felt her life leaving her body. And look, I didn't even like her. I don't like her at all. Mm-mm. And I'm not slut shaming at all, but she did got dirty. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying she deserved what was coming, because that's a horrible thing to say. I said it. I just said it. I'm not saying that though. What I'm saying is, when she breathed her last breath, I felt it.
Guy, did you think that he was an effective protagonist?
Well, I mean, we nicknamed him Old Plain Face. We were supposed to be just taken by Bruno, because he's a very charismatic guy. But Guy, he did his job. Like every team has a role player, and Guy was that big shot Bob Robert Ory, man. I mean, he just came in for the three at the right time. He did just good enough of a job. And if you look at what his character, he was naive to think that Bruno could come at him with such an asinine thing and it actually be like he'd be serious. I love it.
I do like the fact that he doesn't make as many mistakes as, let's say, Cary Grant's character in North by Northwest. He doesn't see a guy get stabbed and then grab the knife in a room full of photographers. But you're right. He plays the everyday guy. It's in his name. It's purposeful.
That's right. He is boring underwear. That's correct. Now, listen, you compare him to Thornhill. See, I got it right that time. And of course you're going to see a different. Thornhill was a cocky douchebag, okay? And that's portrayed. He's just in a situation, and when he's in every situation, it's like, I want answers. Somebody's going to give me answers. Blah, blah, blah. Say? Oh, okay, wrong era. But you see where I'm going. Like, whereas Guy, it just kind of assumes he's not going to get any answers. He has a lot of a why me mentality going here. And really, in this instance, it's kind of fair for him to ask that. I'll throw that out there. But how else could you be subdued into a guy talking about murder playfully unless this guy was damn charismatic and able to sell you that he was a good guy and harmless? If that dynamic does not exist that way between Guy and Bruno, you have in fact done it wrong.
I will say that Bruno, it's undeniable that he has a charm, and it's purposeful once again, because he needs to have that charm so he can dupe Guy into the initial conversation and so forth. But I like the fact that it does also show the psychological effect the committing of that first murder has on him, and how it affects him throughout the film. He is not the perfect bad guy. He drops the freaking lighter near the end. Once again, a nice ticking clock motif of Guy trying to beat his tennis match and Bruno trying to reach down for the lighter. I think it made him much more human and therefore much more of a danger.
To me, what made it so awesome is you have a bad guy, the big bad, who's actually very likable, and he's not putting himself off as the big bad. Like, you don't really know how crazy Bruno is until he actually goes to Metcalf. And you're like, hold up, this dude is actually at Metcalf. Like, this man is really going through with this. Like, this is not a joke. So that's why you like him, because he really does just come off as an eccentric guy. He's just weird.
Any man who creepily follows you alone through the tunnel of love with popcorn, that's a warning sign.
I'll see that and I'll raise you. Any man who plays a game in a party trying to touch an old woman's neck to see if she can be heard is two things. A, nuts. B, bruh, if that don't drip charisma that you convinced this chick that was going to happen, listen, I get it in her age and all that. And you know, like Orlana Tyrell, who was talking to I don't know how I got to Game of Thrones here, but she's all like, "Oh, it's been a while. Seduce away." Maybe that was her attitude, but the fact that he can sell that way, yeah, it's just proof again. Bruno was a charismatic dude, and he came off likable.
Well, just the absurdity. I mean, look, he's talking to the judge about murder. How do you eat lunch after you sentence somebody to die? And the judge says straight up, you commit a crime, you will be tried, and if you're found guilty, you're going to be killed. Boom, that's it. And then he says, but then the judge adds, but it doesn't happen every day. And so Bruno says, I guess a lot of murders get away. I mean, because ultimately he's saying cats are dying all the time. But then the women say, you want to talk an awful lot about murder, and he says everybody does, and he said they say bullshit, right? That's ultimately what they say. And what did he do? He got that woman talking about how she would want to get a gun to kill her husband, and then he says, no, that's too loud. Bang, 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 all that blood. So what her homegirl do? She slides right on in. Poison. So, I mean, come on, man. I mean, like, this dude went to a party thrown by a senator, but he got those women to commit to a conversation where they're talking about killing their husbands by gun and by poison. And then he rationalizes how you can't do it with poison, and they're totally into it. And then she says, you know what? I have an even more splendid idea. I'll take him to the lookout. I'll hit him over the head. I'll pour gasoline all over his body and the car, and I'll light it up. Like, this is what she said. This ain't Bruno. This is what. So people are crazy. And Bruno was in touch with that. Bruno recognizes his crazy.
Yes, with the very line of, but then you would walk home afterwards? If the lack of an Uber is your biggest goddamn inconvenience, bitch. Really?
He would have been a great film critic. Like, that would work. I'd invite him on this show. The only character of the major characters I didn't really connect with was the main love interest, and I thought she was she filled the role.
She was the most boring thing in the movie. I'd want to date Barbara first.
Barbara, the younger sister, was far more of an intriguing character and far more of an emotional weight on the film. Although some people have argued, in Hitchcock's case, there was some nepotism because she was played by Patricia Hitchcock.
Get out. That's her?
Yeah.
Shut up.
The daughter of Alfred Hitchcock.
Now, if I did date her, I would have to creep her out by going, good evening.
This has one of the more famous of Hitchcock's climaxes. That's the scene on the carousel, a technical wonder at the time. Regardless of the fact that what the one stunt that everybody talks about, and the one stunt that Hitchcock said that he would never do again because it's the most dangerous thing he ever filmed, was the old man climbing underneath the carousel. And then just the fact that if you raised his head an inch, he would have been scalped. I find the scene still startling to this day, especially its explosion at the end and how it just falls apart. The fact that Guy didn't get a scratch somehow, I still find hard to believe, but
I did not know what was coming. Can I first point out that a cop shot a gun into a crowded merry-go-round and shot into a crowded merry-go-round where children were, and killed a guy, which made him malfunction that thing.
Considering everything nowadays, that's not exactly outside the realm of possibility.
It's not. And it's like, yeah, they killed Bruno, which is cool. So I guess that cop's like, hey, I killed the bad guy.
Oh, yeah. Make sure that makes it in the report, bitches.
Nonetheless, that scene was awesome. I did not know what was coming. I did not expect this whirlwind to get started. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching and I'm like, hold up. The mom is freaking out, but little Timmy is okay. He is laughing. And guess what? Timmy sees that Bruno is a bad guy and starts whooping Bruno's ass. And then Bruno says, look, kid, you don't understand. I'm crazy. And pushes him off his horse. Like, who pushes a kid? You have to be some kind of crazy to just push a kid on a merry-go-round that can easily throw him off. Easily. Like, Bruno is by far one of the most gutter, cutthroat people I have ever met in my life. And I don't think anyone ever thought that they would hear the term, the adjective gutter used for a Hitchcock character? But Bruno, when you put your hands on a child and don't care what happens, just to keep a light in your hand, man, you some kind of gangster. And that scene was awesome.
Never did I think a man wearing wingtips would do that to a child.
Right?
It doesn't beat Psycho, but yeah, listen, the climax, it may have been a movie that was strung together, as I intimated earlier, but yeah, no, it ends strong. I definitely dug it. The completion of the movie was way stronger than, spending time with the criminologist, although, again, the final scene in Psycho, still superior. I liked how they concluded the movie here as well in Strangers on the Train, though. That was strong.
And I have to ask, because I'm sitting here with two sports fans. You have finally seen Hitchcock direct a sports scene.
This tennis scene beat the singular shit out of any boxing footage in the first two, maybe three Rocky movies. Probably the fourth one too, because it was f***ing Drago. Okay. The one most realistic thing about the choreography in those movies is that somebody did in fact die from repeated heavy headshots. Okay. It felt like some of the tennis was soft, but hey, when you're going with those old sorry 50s wooden rackets and shit, of course your tennis game's a little weaker. I'm just saying. The weakest part of the sports scene for me was this goddamn commentator. Boy, was he bad. Anyways, I can't help but find the genius in that whole montage in general, where oh gosh, well, Bruno's going to whip his ass here because, in the race against time, Bruno's got a clear advantage. As it goes on, and it looks like Guy's going to finish it out, close him out in 3 sets. Hallelujah. Oh shit, here this guy come trying to pull off the goddamn comeback. Listen, Rudy's a shitty movie. Stop trying to do this, okay? Wait, Rudy wasn't made yet. Anyways, doesn't change my answer. But the whole concept of two things. A, love the dropping of the lighter in the grate. Excellent device by you, sir. Well done, Alf. But using tennis as something that can pass by comparatively fast or be prolonged just so. There are 2 or 3 ways he manipulates the rules of the game to work the scene, to keep stretching it, and reasonably so. It isn't one of these things where somebody's hesitating for an inordinate amount of time, just staring at the shot or, thinking about the past. No, this is legit. Okay, he's about ready to do it in 3 sets. Oh, this guy got pissed off and he won the tiebreak. We're going to a whole nother set. You. Okay, Bruno's about ready to close out match point. Up, deuce, motherfucker. Yeah. And once you get locked in the deuce loop, that is a rough place to be as any sort of a tennis enthusiast on the court or in the stands, period.
While I've never been overly interested in watching tennis because just the going back and forth for me, it's not my bag. I'm not saying they're not athletes because they're very athletic, and I give Serena Williams all the props in the world, but it's not my bag. But watching this movie, I was into it. Like, he was like, boom, ace. I was like, ace. Get him, guy.
I mean, exactly.
Ace.
I was talking like that.
And then when he got the fault, I was like, shit, guy, you gotta hurry up. You gotta hurry up. Let's go. And then whenever he dropped the light, I was like, all right, man, you got a second. He might not be able to get this light out. Like, I'm legitimately watching it like that. And then I'm seeing, and he did a good job in picking tennis, because if you did anything else, you go basketball, football, soccer, there's a time limit.
But you're also dependent on other people, your other players.
True, you're absolutely dependent on other people. But when you have golf, you have tennis, it can be stretched, but whatever. But you're absolutely right. You pick a sport where you saw that first match went so fast. This man, boom, ace, fault, ace. Like, he just ate him up, so it went by so quickly. And then you said at the beginning of the third set, get everything ready. I'm sitting here saying, so I'm like, look, his cab tab has got to be like $100, because that last match went on a lot longer than it was supposed to.
With that being said, do you guys think that Strangers on a Train is required viewing?
Watching this movie, I forgot that I was watching a movie made in 1951. I was just just into this movie. This is, to me, my favorite Hitchcock film. I didn't know that it existed before today. It's hard for me to praise it as hard as I have. And I want to say that it's required because I love the movie. But for some strange reason, I can't, and I feel weird about it. Because I really like The Hangover, but I would never say that The Hangover is required. So as much as I like, and I really like Strangers on the Train, like really like you don't understand. I'm going to put this in my rotation. Like I'm going to get this movie. I'm going to watch it again.
You know, it is a good movie and it is recommended, but it is not required. And I think the piece that TJ fails to find to make it complete enough for him to recommend it is connective tissue. I think that there are transition pieces in the movie that don't go quite as well as they should. I mean, there is definitely a strong open, but then the movie actually starts when Bruno comes across him at the gate. There's just one too many things. Maybe the preposterousness of a lot of things like, listen, suddenly you care about disturbing mother. You'll tell a joke. She'll think it's funny and go back to bed. Just shoot the motherfucker. Oh, wait. You're trying to tell me Guy was dumb enough to give him the fucking gun in the first place? I'm sorry, Demos. That's a bleep, but it needed it. Okay. There's just a lot of little things. When you have to suspend this much belief, it's tougher to finish the job. When you know, listen, it's one of those things where you say that you're like, come on, Alfie, you're better than that. You could have come up with something better than that shit. You know, don't cheapen me here. You've done too well for me to think that's the best you could do.
But using a gun, it's so loud and messy.
Bang, 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 and all that blood. What?
Bang, bang. When did we start talking about Barbara? I mean, what? No. Anyways, no, and listen, man.
She's still alive. She may watch this. So.
Oh, yeah, that would be terrible. Anyways, I think it's that connective tissue that stops it from being a required viewing for TJ. For me, I'm like, come on, man. You know, and I know Bruno needs to be the way he is for this movie to go, but there are times I'm like, the wingtips and the monogram come on, man. You know. I can't. Can I really vote for a movie as required viewing when he's got wingtips and a monogram top?
It's a sign of the time, so you can't fault it for.
No. I don't care about the fashion aspect. Hell, I know some dude. My quarterback would have rock damn wingtips and a monogram tie because that fits his personality, but not the personality of a big bad in a movie. But I mean,
that's the thing. You wouldn't expect the big bad to do something like that, and I think that attributes a little bit to the unexpected nature of Bruno. He's never committed a murder before, and it has an effect on him as you see throughout the film.
Perseverance.
Things, yeah.
Perseverance. Sorry.
Perseverance? Is that it? You're putting perseverance as a motive for murder now? Is that it?
He had a bucket list and he achieved it. Way to go, Bruno.
Tonight's story of suspense surrounds perseverance. You have to say perseverance because that's how British people say it.
I mean, maybe dying in a freak merry-go-round accident was on his bucket list too. I mean, this is a guy
nailed it
that truly achieved something. Anyway,
Demos, when you said, I gotta tell you, when you said that, I see the last scene being completely different. He reaches in his back pocket and lifts it. Guy, I just want you to check that last box off.
I do honestly think that this is required viewing. I think it's one of Hitchcock's best. I actually think that this is actually a little bit more cohesive than some of the other ones that we have seen. Although I do prefer North by Northwest, and there are definitely elements in that film. North by Northwest took some leaps that were illogical, but you were just so drawn into the story and the character that you're able to overlook them. And I think that same thing happens in this film, although I think that some of the jumps made are far more logical. They set up so many threads, such as the lighter, or such as even the theme of doubles in this film. Is take a step back. Bruno, the dark double of Guy, Miriam, and Barbara. I think one of my favorite scenes is when Guy finally is on the train headed to Metcalf towards the end of the film. He's sitting alone and he happens to look over notices two other strangers tapping their feet together accidentally, meeting the exact same way. Because, oh, look, these are two other people that are meeting. Who knows what their story might be? Sequel. Anyway.
Willing to guess it's not effing murder.
Yeah. More strangers on a train. This is a far stronger story than maybe you give credit to. But as far as the way that its narrative plays through, as far as the gripping nature of the story and how it's told and how layered it is and how it uses its own cinematography to effectively tell the story, tell me that one scene where he's in Washington and he sees Bruno's silhouette on, I think it was the Jefferson Memorial, if that didn't creep the shit out of you, despite how charming this bastard is. I think it's required. I think I have a stronger affinity for it than I think that Kyle does. But I think we can all agree that this is, and maybe I'm speaking for you, Kyle, when I say I think it's very highly recommended.
Yeah, it's a good movie. I definitely recommend it. It's better than my dad thinks it is, I'll tell you that.
What do you guys think of Strangers on a Train? Let us know in the comments below. What other Hitchcock films do you think that we ought to cover? Let us know. We have a lot more coming on the way.
Thanks for having me, Kyle, brother, as always, man. Thanks for doing this, brother. So if you want to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter and Snapchat, the same, Tokyo J, TOKEOJ. Every Tuesday night, I'm rocking dinner time with this dude. Had a great show, and we're doing another one next week. And y'all want it. You're clicking like, so it's going to be more of me here. So what more can you ask for?
I am glad to see that we are, in fact, not a stranger on the train. And really what we learned tonight is the way we keep Alfred Hitchcock in check is we limit his modes of transportation. Because if you hand him a plane, he'll try to fly you all over the effing world. Because North by Northwest. I'm joking. Demos. Breathe. Of course, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You can find me on Twitter at the SOTG, and of course on Instagram as the same, the SOTG. Find me on Facebook as the student of the game. Check out my coverage of the UCF Knights on Blue HQ Media's sportsmediapass.com. And then on top of all that, you'll find my coverage of the Miami Dolphins with the Dolphins Wire of USA Today. My man Tokyo J already told you how we get down on Tuesday nights, doing that whole thing on dinner time. Boom.
And make sure to check us out here every week, where life is hilarious by default.